Has there ever been a game from your childhood that seemed unobtainable? The golden goose of your collection, let's say? Theme Hospital on the PlayStation 1, released in 1998 by Bullfrog Productions and EA, is kind of like that particular waterfowl for me. My personal history with the game goes back to issue 88 of the official UK PlayStation magazine. With that issue came bundled my very first ever demo disc. Being the first of anything, it was very influential, and I ended up owning many of the full games featured within. Theme Hospital, however, never did find its way to my collection. I never once saw it for sale on retail, which isn't too surprising since it came out all the way back in '98, but I never even found a used copy. Now I could have bought it online, sure, while not massively expensive, going for about $50, I did find that hard to justify as a sole purchase because I'm such a Scrooge. So it was with great happiness when my stinginess finally paid off after all these years, and I found it for $6 in a Salvation Army op shop. So, with about $45 saved, it's with great excitement that I can finally show you Theme Hospital. Bullfrog Productions, headed up by one Peter Molyneux, was already notable for a few god game or simulation titles such as Populous and Theme Park. While Molyneux wasn't responsible for the development of Theme Hospital, instead focusing his attention to Dungeon Keeper at the time of development, its premise was plucked straight off a whiteboard of ideas by one Mark Webley. Taking on the role of designer, him and the lead artist Gary Carr instantly started spending a great deal of time in hospitals for inspiration. This eventuated in them even bearing witness to a spinal surgery. Lucky! When it turned out that real hospitals are as clinical and sometimes sad as you'd expect, the duo instead opted for a more comical tone. Originally released on the PC in 1997, today I'm focusing on the PlayStation port from a year later. In Theme Hospital, you take the role of a hospital admin, gradually taking on more and more complex institutions to build and operate. Each level starts out much as expected for what is here referred to as a business simulation. Starting out, you're presented with a wad of cash and a vast empty building. Beginning with literally a floor and 4 walls, you're tasked with hiring staff, building diagnosis and treatment rooms, and then making a bunch of important decisions in order to run a successful hospital. But most importantly, make bank. Along the way, it's paramount to keep both the patients and staff happy. If the endeavour fails and you kill too many patients or get a low enough patient rating that they stop turning up, it will be game over. The end game is to reach a predetermined number of reputation points in cash, and from there, it's onwards onto bigger and more complex hospitals. Like any business simulation worth its salt, you need menus. And boy, Theme Hospital sure has a decent selection of those. An empty hospital is worthless, so first off, you'll want to build some rooms. These are split into several categories: diagnosis, treatment, clinics, and facilities. Diagnosis includes rooms such as the GP's office, wards, and of course, the win-all general diagnosis room. These will be the first port of call when a patient walks through your doors. Next, we have treatment. This includes rooms such as a pharmacy and an operating theatre. From there are clinics which serve specific ailments. This is where the humour shines, as instead of things we'd rather not manage as gamers, like anything to do with tumours, there are clinics like the inflation room, which treats patients with bloaty head. This is cured by a doctor popping the head with a needle and then re-inflating the head to normal size using a bike wheel pump. Lastly, there are the facilities rooms. These purposes will not net you any income, however, they're useful if you need somewhere for the patients to go to the toilet or a room where the staff can relax on break. But none of these rooms are useful without staff, and that's where the staff selection screen comes in handy. You can hire doctors, nurses, handymen, and receptionists. While I haven't figured out a reason to have more than one receptionist, it's important to have plenty of handymen once the hospital is in full operation to water the plants, maintain machines, and clean up spew. The number of doctors and nurses you'll need will depend on how many rooms you've built. Not all employees are equal either. They'll cost more depending on how skilled and professional they are, and some doctors even have special skills, enabling only them to work in certain clinics and diagnosis rooms. But rooms full of stuff and employees to man them are useless without patients, and that leads us to the Furnished corridor panel. The first thing you'll likely want to add from this menu is the reception desk, but you also want to add a bunch of benches, drinks machines, plants, radiators for warmth, and fire extinguishers. I don't think I ever saw a fire break out while playing, but they're supposedly there so visiting VIPs will give you a good safety review. A different set of menus are all about business. Here, you can do things like review staff and give them a pay rise, or alternatively, the boot, the stats screen, charts, and policy. There's also a real estate screen where you can buy more land to expand your hospital, as well as a bank screen where you can lend money off this trustworthy looking fellow. It goes deeper though. Instead of waiting on scientific journals to be written that detail the latest and hottest diseases, you can set up a research room and find them out yourself. This is a very handy room to have, as a doctor researching can also figure out improvements to your existing machines. I'd recommend a dedicated doctor for this job, and in the business screen, you can adjust what he should dedicate his time to researching the most. Alternatively, there are also training rooms where senior doctors will train up the young'uns for awesome skills. I personally didn't really use these, they just took up valuable space and the training takes too long. You're better off hiring those who, went to university and have the skills up front. Running a hospital isn't a breeze, however. One major job as admin is keeping everyone happy. Decent amounts of seating, plants, and short wait times keep the patients in order, but staff love lots of windows. That took me a while to figure out as I don't have a manual and couldn't find a Ps1 specific scan online. Alternatively, you can just throw more money at them until they're happy. Money truly is a driving force here if you haven't already figured that out. Later on, those patients with deeper pockets can be bumped up the queue and given preferential treatment. These are private hospitals after all. Money is the key to being cured. Also, as the big boss, you'll constantly be tasked with making important decisions. Notifications will continuously pop up along the top of the screen. These range from deciding what to do with a patient, i.e. there's an 80% chance that this patient has a bloaty head, should we proceed? If you do and they're wrong, the patient dies by the way, to accepting VIPs and whether or not a patient should wait while you build more rooms if you can't diagnose them. Otherwise, it's your duty to oversee emergencies. You'll be given the choice to accept a group of people with a certain sickness, and a timer will start ticking down to get them all cured. This is a great way to get your cure count up quickly, but also leaves the kill count vulnerable if you're sloppy. There are also earthquakes at random. While the only natural disaster I saw, these are capable of wrecking your machinery, so be sure to get a handyman on the job ASAP. The levels play out through the year. How fast this happens can be adjusted in the start menu. The level isn't over when December 31st ticks over, but at the end of each year, you might receive awards and can view leaderboards. The leaderboards aren't entirely important, but they show how your hospital is performing against a bunch of competitors. These rivals don't ever really impact you directly, but they exist to compare your stats against something, as I'm sure they'd seem a bit arbitrary otherwise. The rewards are nice though. These will give you a nice boost of reputation and money to start the new year with. There are 12 levels all up, and progress is saved by either a password system or a memory card. It's nice that there are options for both, but the passwords are only available for the start of each level. If you're saving to a memory card, which occupies 2 slots, you can save whenever you damn well please. Now, this is a port from the PC, so there are some issues. For one, there's quite a bit of content missing in this version, but I can't really comment on that since I've never played it on PC. There is, however, quite a bit of lag, especially when there's a lot going on screen. It can take 2 or 3 seconds to transition from menus too. Supposedly, this is due to the PS1 having no dedicated sprite engine like the Sega Saturn or Nintendo 64. Sprites instead seem to be rendered in software, which bogs things down. The PS1's controller, as you can imagine, isn't really up to the task of such an in-depth simulator. The game predates the DualShock controller, so the directional buttons are relied upon to navigate. The movement of the cursor is frustratingly slow and is definitely the lowest point of this game, as is the fact that you can't scroll diagonally. This game would have been a great contender for the PlayStation mouse. Oh, and while I'm on a tangent, why can't I rotate the view? This can make it very difficult to place furniture behind walls, but I digress. The graphics are most definitely up there with the PC original. While not as high resolution, obviously, they're certainly good enough for the PlayStation. It's just a shame that the game gets bogged down if there's too much on screen, as before mentioned. The sound, on the other hand, is minimal. There's no music as you play, just like a real hospital I suppose. The repetitive sound effects irked my girlfriend so much that she closed the door to my games room. The comments from the snarky receptionist are quite enjoyable, however. It's just too bad that there's not much of anything else in the sound department. I was very excited to finally play the full version of Theme Hospital, and for the most part, I wasn't disappointed. It's not perfect on the PlayStation, however, and it sounds like the PC version is the way to go if this is your first time playing. It was, at least, very addicting. Well, for a time anyway. I found that when I first started playing, I would lose hours at a time. but by the time you get to the 6th or 7th level, things do start to become quite repetitive. There's only so much you can get out of running a hospital, but I am happy with the amount of gameplay time that I did get out of it. If you want to play Theme Hospital in the present, there are a few options. For one, it was released on the PlayStation Store around the world from the years 2008 to 2010, although it's since been removed from the European version for some reason. Alternatively, you can buy the PC version from GOG or Origin, and these work fine on modern computers. Even more alternatively, there's an open source patch called Core 6TH that improves the resolution and even adds a level editor.